Good afternoon, everyone. I hope all of you have had a chance to have your cup of coffee during the break because some of your dashboards might still need that caffeine kick. A quick show of hands. How many of you have actually thought that you could have brewed that second cup of coffee while waiting for your dashboard to load? Or you just wanted a quick follow-up of why your sales spiked last quarter, only to be met with a polite no from your analyst that, yeah, we'll surely worked on it, but probably next sprint. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. Traditional BI tools, with all their hefty licensing fee, fall short in the face of data needs of the modern digital organizations. So today we are here uh, to talk about how we, when faced with the similar challenges in Databricks, decided to supercharge our BI experience through the organization by migrating to AI BI. I am Aman Gupta. I am Senior Engineering Manager in Databricks. I have over 15 years of experience in data engineering and analytics, and I am joined with me.
Hi everyone, welcome to the session. I am R.K. Aduri. I have more than 15 years of work experience. I am currently working as a staff data engineer as part of data engineering.
Yep. So in today's session, we are going to talk about when faced with similar challenges, how Databricks decided to migrate to AI BI to democratize and supercharge our BI experience for all our enterprise users. And by the end of this session, you will have a ready-to-go migration playbook about migrating to AI BI and probably a nudge to start your pilot this quarter itself. But before diving deep, let's talk about why modern organizations are looking to democratize data and AI. Today's organization realizes that it is not just enough to have selected few technical users to have access to all your data. They want everybody from field sales to finance ops to have the similar level of access as the analysts of the yesteryears. However, these traditional BI tools with their licensing fee, which is prohibitive to grant licenses to every single users in your organization, and then the need of the selected few analysts to help you make sense out of that data makes this uphill task. It is a stalling effort, but let's imagine it with a scenario. Imagine Sarah from marketing. She just has a simple ask. Why the customer churn spiked last week. To get sense out of this, she turns to her trusted BI source to make a new report. Just to be turned off by that her license is not good enough to create a new report. She needs a new power user license, which will cost her an arm and a leg. She went up her chain, got that finance approval. She created that new report only to realize that her dashboard is taking forever to load. She needs to write a mini ETL or extract to make it any performant. She went about that. She created the mini ETL, dashboard started loading little faster, only to be left with that there are multiple fractured metrics and a data silo which does not tally with her data lakehouse. Okay, it still works. Now she turned to her inbuilt AI assistant, which came along with the traditional BI tool. She asked the same question, why my customer churn spiked last week? AI assistant replied, sorry, I can't answer that because you have not yet modeled your data perfectly. So in a summary, traditional BI tools with their prohibitive licensing fee does not let you grant license to everybody to begin with. Then the need of mini ETL leaves you with the fractured data and another data silo. And then the AI assistants being a second-class citizen does not let you have the same data democratization experience as you would wish for. To help answer that how AI BI challenges these status quo, I have RK with me.
Yeah, thank you, Aman. Okay, so let's find out if AI/BI dashboards is the right strategic tool for your enterprise analytics. So we have like 4 strong points here to look at and evaluate whether the AI/BI dashboards are the right strategic tool. So the first one is they're highly performant dashboards, and unlike your Tableau, unlike your traditional BI dashboards. So you have to basically extract the data and then maybe for faster refreshes, and then you just wait for the data to load. And so you basically you end up consuming a lot of cost. And so essentially you sorry about that. So you have the dashboards. You need AIBI's dashboards don't require any extraction of the data. So they're already available for you, comes with the data governance, and you have all the data that is needed comes with the Unity catalog. And where this becomes the strong point is they're cost effective. That means you don't need to purchase any licenses. AIBA dashboards doesn't have any licenses. And you have an effective AI assistant called AIBA Genie that I'm going to talk about in the next slide, that is going to help you answer the questions without writing any SQL queries. And all of this comes with unified data governance through Unity Catalog. So the Unity Catalog is your go-to data governance model for all your data access needs. And you don't need to come up with any other security models or access models for AIBA dashboards separately. So it all comes, it's tightly coupled with data intelligence platform. So, okay, what is AI via Genie? So let's say you want to have a conversation with the data. So this is essentially a chat interface that is available right there in your dashboard. So as you fire up your dashboard, so this chat, I'm going to call it as dashboard chat GPT. We call it as like Genie. And this really works well with the human feedback. That means you can interact with it immediately and it start giving you answers. And also it understands your semantic model of your data. So the way it does is like, remember the Unity catalog that I talked about? So all of the annotated data sets that comes with the Unity catalog helps the Genie to learn the semantic model of your data and then presents it in a chat format so that you don't have to write any dashboard queries. You can just simply ask some questions to it and then it's going to start answering all that. So, well, the traditional BI dashboards don't have very limited capability, and then this is where this one of the strategic points where we decided to go with AIBA dashboards. I'm going to talk about the performance as well. Like you can now think like, okay, so I have these dashboards, and is it performant? Am I going to still wait for that coffee to brew and then while this dashboard is loading? So essentially everything is serverless here, so you don't need to wait for the data to load, and it optimizes very well with something called query caching. So the query caching is like it loads to your browser and then you can immediately have access to this data right there in your browser if it is small enough to fit in your browser, and you feel like you're interacting uh, with essentially a real-time interaction with your data. So, and what about the scale? Does it scale? Yeah, it definitely does. You have data intelligence platform that scales very nicely. Unlike traditional BI dashboards, essentially you might hit a performance issue over there. Like it doesn't, your extracts may be running very, very slow, and you might end up paying for the compute task. And so this data intelligence platform scales nicely with Unity catalog and everything, and so that your AIBA dashboards are primed for all the data analytics, all your enterprise needs, and then this is why it becomes your strategic partner for your dashboards. So to talk about like how we all did that, I'm going to hand it over to Aman.
Thanks, Arthur. So now that RK has shown how AI/BI effectively democratizes the data and was the strategic choice for Databricks, now it was time to tackle our next big hurdle, which was how we can migrate 1,300 of our dashboards while keeping the business running. So repairing the plane while it is flying. So to tackle this, let me dive in deeper. So projects of this scales often stalls under their own weight. To do this much more effectively, we decided that we'll start to think really slow during the planning phase so that we can execute fast without any rollback during the implementation phase. To do that, we divided our whole project journey into 5 major pillars. We started off with inventory analysis so that we are not working against a moving target constantly. We started off by inventorying every single dashboard, its user, uses, and complexity, and went about creating a very clean prioritized list. In the second stage, we talked about creating a feasibility study where we documented all the equivalent features between the two tools and also any quirks so that every dashboard that we are migrating to does not feel like reinventing the wheel. You will have a ready templatized SOP to move from traditional tool to AI/BI in a quick jiffy. In the third step, we invested heavily on our accelerator. There were 3 major accelerators we invested in. One was reverse engineering, where we were parsing through the traditional BI tools, BI logic, and getting it into a clean spreadsheet so that you are not clicking multiple times to get through that logic. In the second stage, we talked about forward engineering, where this logic was forwarded into AI/BI and help us create a complete UI. And the third accelerator was about creating a UI for the spreadsheet uploading. You might realize that in most of the BI tools, doing an ad hoc analysis on a spreadsheet is the most common CUJ. We did not just want to replicate that CUJ, but we actually wanted to enhance that experience so that uploading utility was a much better experience with a UI, and now you have a genie on top of it. So instead of creating a new dashboard, you can use LLM to chat with your spreadsheets. The fourth one actually was a regression utility where we were doing a data difference between the two tools so that the UAT users are not burdened with that heavy lifting of matching the data between the two tools. Next stage, it was about change management. Every new platform lives or dies by its adoption. We were very clear since the beginning that we wanted to engage with our stakeholders in the straightforward manner. We were talking about every bi-weekly steerco updates, targeted emails, demo invites, and hand-holding sessions where we were enabling the users to make the transition much more easier and user-friendly. After going through these 4 pillars of thinking and planning, the 5th pillar was about execution, the actual execution where we were migrating the dashboards from previous tool, legacy tool to AI/BI. Let's zoom in on each of these pillars further. The first step of our 5 steps migration plan was to get our house in order. We started off by doing our inventory analysis where we were tracking our uses based on metadata. So to do that, there was admin dashboards in the legacy tool. We went about not only creating all the inventory lists, but also the uses about from last N months. We were surprised to know that there were 84% of the dashboard which were not even touched since last several months. We decided to ruthlessly retire them. This and this came with its own thorough change management where we were engaging with our stakeholders, taking our qualitative feedback, etc. But this gave us a quick early win where the pressure on us to get more additional licenses while we were migrating reduced much further. And second, we were left with a much more manageable list of dashboards which we could have migrated. So if you are also thinking about migrating to AI/BI but are overwhelmed by the number of dashboards that your organization has, our inventory analysis, our users analysis can be a very quick, low effort mechanism where you can come back with a very realistic timeline and the budget for this migration. Post retiring 84% of the dashboard, we were left with a leaner set of 204 dashboards. To divide it further, we uh, targeted the first 3% of them, which was the most complex and also the most used one. The reason being, if we could do the most complex one early on, we would have all our learnings. That would make the next 9%, 117 of them, like a cakewalk. Uh, so this was our prioritization list from based on our quantitative analysis of users. But we did not rely just solely on this. This was also the time that we wanted to reach to our stakeholders, and there were n number of that. We could not have possibly engaged with each one of them personally, so we decided to identify champions among them. So these champions became a spokesperson for throughout our migration journey. They did not just uh, bubble up any challenges from their BUs, but also became the spokesperson of the centralized migration team that this is how the enablement would look like. We took their qualitative feedback on our inventory analysis and iterated over that list about how we are going about that. So with our quantitative analysis and the qualitative feedback from our stakeholder, it was time for us to move to the next stage, which was the building blocks. We did not kick off our sprint by migrating any single dashboard. We went about creating an infrastructure of building blocks, which becomes a foundation layer. So it doesn't matter if you are going to migrate one dashboard or 1,000, it will stay for you. We started off this by creating a feature mapping and feasibility study, where we documented equivalent feature between the legacy tool and AIBI, along with its quirks. So a feature A from legacy tool always maps to a feature A sharp in AIBI. So thus creating a SOP or a template for us for the migration. In the stage 2, we moved on from theory to hands-on. This is the stage where we picked up the two most complex dashboard for each of the business units, say GTM or marketing, and deployed this SOP to actually do the migration. Then we engaged our champions to iterate over these new dashboards and created a new SOP as the feedback came in. By doing this, we finalized that this is the SOP, this is the sign off, this is how we are going to do for all 122 of the dashboard that we're left with. In the stage 3, I talked about a migration accelerator and tooling. So by investing in these migration accelerator early on, we were able to shave off almost 40% of the manual time in the subsequent sprints, and we were doing like 5 times more dashboard compared to the first sprint. In the stage 4, this was a stage where we were talking about a centralized infrastructure. I'll give you examples of, say, Git check-ins, schema creation, naming convention, alerting and monitoring. These are the things you cannot left it to your BUs to do it again and again. These are the things that you have to do at a centralized organization place and then move on to translate it to the rest of the business units. This was also the time that we created a governance framework about the processes like RACI framework between the analyst teams and the centralized operations team. With the scaffolding in place, this was the time for us to step on the gas for the actual migration. How did we achieve the 122 dashboards in just 9 weeks? So these migration can last forever, and going by my 5 pillars theory and all, it might look a little complex, but if you focus on the actual time to deployment was 9 weeks. To do that, we divided the whole project journey into micro projects of 2 weeks each, where we were going through a sprint. We picked up a bunch of reports from our prioritized list. We deployed our migration accelerator to do the heavy lifting, which migrated a dashboard with 80% accuracy. Then we deployed our SOPs for the rest of the 20%, where we were bridging the gap for the fine tuning. Next stage, we deployed our regression accelerator, where we were matching the data between the legacy tool and AIBI and providing a very simple report to our UAT users that everything looks fine, can you please sign off? Next stage, we got the sign off from these UAT users. And then most important, deprecate the legacy tool, legacy dashboard. If you keep on let it live, you will have new enhancement going on and it will never end from there. So yeah, rinse and repeat 122 times till we get over our inventory completely. The second part here was be very clinical with your project planning. When you go about migration, this is also the time when users will ask for a lot more features. We were very intentional in our project planning that we wanted to keep the scope as is migration. But we also wanted to have it an iterative process. So we divided this through the agile framework where we were learning through our sprints, and our future sprints were much more faster and much lesser QA defects compared to the initial ones. Similarly, don't rely only on the manual effort. Invest heavily in automation. That is how we had decided that we did not want to start any of our migration till we have all our accelerator and heavy lifting in place. So we automated all the repetitive tasks so that our developers were actually focusing on the edge case scenarios, and the quality of the output was much, much higher compared to if they would have done everything manually with the repeatable clicks. Similarly, the regression. End user population would be the highest for you. You would have thousands of users who would be owner of these dashboard. If you keep on waiting for the sign off from each one of them, it would take forever. You create a heavy lift through this regression tools where you have a ready reports. It is giving a green or red depending upon the data is 100% matching or not. And maybe there are some ambers where you deep dive and figure it out that which row is not matching. But it doesn't need to be done for every single of the dashboard. So with the migration in place and a dashboard migrated, it was time to move off our users from the legacy tool. So it is scary for the end users, the business users to acclimatize in the new platform. And that is where clear communication, change management, and maybe a bit of healthy pressure also comes from the top. So as I talked about, we started off our change management much earlier than when we even thought about going about this migration. So we kicked off our change management plan with targeted emails, invites to our demo sessions where we were showing how our SOP is getting matched between the two tools, and also a go links for all the frequently asked questions. In the second stage, I talked about that we created our inventory, but we also took the sign-off and qualitative feedback from our champions and deployed these champions as our spokesperson for whole of our migration. In the third stage, we enabled our BU champions. We did not want to be the only centrally governed team who would answer all these questions. So they were bubbling up any issues that our users were having back to us, which we were taking as a feedback and improving on that. And they were also our spokesperson in terms that maybe this issue that you are raising is already solved for you, and this is the way to go about that. So you can't do it all alone. You need your champions, you need your team to be there for you. Fourth, we did not left it alone to our champions to field all the questions. We went about weekly office hours of inform, listen, and redo, which kept the confidence high because, yeah, everybody want them to be listened. They were being heard. And then we were also deploying that feedback if needed into our agile plan. After going through this exercise, it was finally the time to revoke the license. If you have given the sign off, data looks good, and dashboard is migrated, you cannot have the license throughout. So we revoked the license for that user for whom dashboard was migrated and mandated a company-wide policy that every new dashboard has to be created in AI/BI only, thus cementing AI/BI as the default platform for whole organization. And after going through this, we also kept on tracking. If you remember, there was a users analysis dashboard. We created a similar metadata user analysis dashboard in AI/BI. And we were tracking throughout that, has the user really migrated? Is the adoption really picking up? And this became the centralized governance body to go through the whole migration. Let's see how this body took reins next. So we have done the migration, but how do you make any change like this, any migration, a lasting change where the people actually adopt the platform and don't just feel that it has been shoved down their throat. So to do that, we went about creating 4 pillars, starting with the hypercare, persona-based training, strategic tooling, and centralized governance. In the hypercare phase, when the dashboard was migrated, we deployed our SMEs from the center COE and also our champions to hold weekly office hours where they handheld each of these end users, even with the minor things like how to write their DB SQL queries or how to debug their newly deployed dashboard during the month-end closure. But we could not have done it throughout. We wanted to do it on the scale. So we then recorded 31 of these trainings, which we deployed on our Employee Academy, where people can go and do it in their own on-demand training. But we also did a lot of live trainings for the change management, where a whole BU was invited and showed the journey of how AI/BI looks like, how the navigation looks, and maybe a lot more persona-based training where we were going really deep on how to create a DB SQL, how to create how to create a performance SQL in DB SQL. With this, the third part was strategic tooling. We did not just want the new tool to be a replacement of a legacy tool. We also wanted to provide that cherries on the top, which was, in our case, it was a spreadsheet analytics. We realized that 30% of our users were using spreadsheet analytics as the major CUJ in the legacy tool. And it was cumbersome for them to upload this file back to the old tool, create a new dashboard for just one user's purpose, share it back to their business users. It was not so conducive, but it was the major use case. To make it easier, we created a UI-based utility where people were allowed to upload their spreadsheet. And now Genie was the LLM-based tool, which did not need you to create even a dashboard. You can just start asking questions to your spreadsheet without even creating a new dashboard. Our end users love this experience, and if you are in the field of BI, you would realize that spreadsheet analytics has been a pain. AI/BI does this really, really well. Coming to the governance, so the analytics is generally driven by business. Centralized governance is still needed from compliance and regulatory purposes. So this is also the time for us to go back to the drawing board and think about the centralized alerting and monitoring. All your dashboards are not equally important, but the ones which are critically important should not fail. And if they are failing continuously or their performance are dropping continuously, this was the time for the COE to intervene. So that is where the user's dashboard and alerting and monitoring comes to play. And also for the row-level security. Data has to be secured. You can have only hierarchy-based access to the data. All of this was done through Unity Catalog and applying the row-level security throughout the AI/BI as well as Databricks layer. With that, let's talk about our lessons throughout this journey. Every major project like this comes with its own share of challenges and learnings. We can boil down ours into 3 major ones. The first one was the feature mapping. People were accustomed of using the older tool, and they wanted the exact look and feel, also the UI-based logic. To tackle this challenge, we migrated all the business logic onto the DB SQL layer for them. It has a two-pronged purposes. First of all, DB SQL is much more faster. That is where we were talking about the real time and not waiting for your dashboard to load. And second, it lets you do a much better change management through Git control. If the logic is only at the UI layer, you cannot have a consistent change control, change management. While DB SQL lets you have the logic in your Git layer and have a consistent change management. The impact, we were able to accelerate the whole migration through the SOP-based model in no time. We have already shown it took us just 9 weeks to migrate whole Databricks onto AI/BI. Second layer was the change management. People are accustomed to the way they are doing, and any new change comes with the same stuff, resistance to the change, steep learning curve. To handle that, we focus early on about enablement. We did not want this migration journey to be only about all these dashboards are now in AI BI, you make sense out of it. We held 31 recorded and live trainings. We had user enablement in the mind right from the beginning. We had champions who were the spokesperson throughout the whole journey. The result, the early skeptics became our advocates in no time. And the adoption graph, you will see in the next slide, talks a lot about that. Third, the project management. The migration projects are generally the one which have to be very tightly controlled in the beginning itself. So uh, analytics tool generally have tons of users. So stakeholder management and the consistent definition of done. People keep asking for a new enhancement while you are migrating. We were very intentional since the beginning that champions were the ones who would do the stakeholder management for us. And the only definition of done is when the legacy tool is deprecated. You cannot have both the dashboards running and say the migration is done. So impact, we were able to migrate 100% of the dashboard in just 5 months, including the planning stage. With that, you might say, all good in theory, but did it actually work? We have spent last 20 minutes or so talking about how great AI/BI is and how well we did our migration. But if I were you, I would have this question, but did it really work? So yes, let the KPI slide do the talking. First, the performance. Are the same most complex, most used dashboard, the top 5 of them, were 5 times better performant in AI/BI. The chart below shows the stark difference between the two tools and the loading time. Second, about the adoption itself. Any new tool, people have a lot of qualms about adopting to the new ones. But we had almost the same number of users, 2,000 of them. MAU, the charts talk about monthly active users, with a 80% higher NPS score. So yeah, people were skeptical in the beginning, but when they saw that their dashboards were so much more performant and they don't have to wait for their coffee, they were ready to adopt. The two inflection point that you see were the two major phases that we did, where we deprecated the old dashboard and let people start using AI/BI. Third, this probably will ring a lot of bell with you that, yeah, $880,000 of saving annually over just licenses. I'm not even talking about people, infrastructure, or anything, just licenses. And this is for a relatively smaller organization like Databricks and number of heads. Just see what this number would mean for your own organizations with tens of thousands of users. And all of this was done in just 5 months. So yeah, theory does hold. Whatever we started off with our mission with, the numbers do talk about that we were successful about it. So now what about your organization? First of all, migration is cheap, fast, and pays for itself in almost no time. It takes time in quarters and not years. The session might look that there were 5 stages and multiple journeys, but all of this, the overall time was 5 months, and the actual migration time was just 2 months for Databricks, if we do intentionally and we follow this playbook. Second, everybody is talking about AI right now, and there are steps to reach there. AI/BI is your fast pass to that. Genie comes inbuilt. You can talk to your data in natural language, and you don't need analysts to make sense out of that data. Your business users can use natural language to talk to this data and democratize it for their own self. And third, the establishing data-driven culture is no longer optional. It was good to have some years back, but after the Gen AI wave, it is a must-have. Otherwise, your competitor is going to take that leap. So don't think, you won't have to think twice about a licensing cost. That itself is a big win. And then you have a governance structure with UC right in place without doing another layer. So if you're ready to take that leap, if you're ready to start small, do your pilots, this is the time. AI/BI is your strategic tool, and we are there to help you out with that. We also want to thank our partners, Leveletics, who, Maulik is here from the team to talk about that after this talk. They helped a lot with this whole implementation, and you can talk to them. They have a booth in Expo. Uh, this is all forward-looking statement. We want this is for informational purposes. Next, please complete your surveys. It helps us a lot with curating better content for the next year. If this session sound interesting to you, there are rest of these AIBI session for you, which are going to happen today and tomorrow. And after this is the time for any questions, which we can take after this presentation down here. Thank you so much for your time and energy.
Yeah, thank you very much.